Discover the incredible truth behind the General's tattoo, an unexpected heartwarming revelation. In the tightly knit town of Maplewood, where fields roll out like velvet carpets, whispers filled the air about a man whose ink told tales of sacrifice and sorrow. Jake, a 22-year-old mechanic with grease-streaked hands and a heart full of determination, had no idea how intertwined his fate would become with that of General Thomas, a war hero whose somber tattoo sparked both intrigue and judgment in the townsfolk. Jake had spent years working tirelessly to pull his mother out of the shadows cast by his father's abandonment, dreaming of respect and belonging. Yet, every day felt like he was living in muted colors, a shadow against the brighter backdrop of life in Maplewood. But everything changed when the word spread like wildfire. General Thomas needed a mechanic. Jake's heart raced. He felt it deep in his bones, a chance to step out of the shadows and prove he was worthy of respect. With the old veteran's truck as his canvas, he saw an opportunity to paint a new chapter in his life. This isn't just a truck, he thought, determined to make it shine for a charity event that could bring the community together. As Jake worked alongside the general, he quickly learned that the man was both a hero and enigma. There were layers beneath the ink of that tattoo, each swirl and line screaming stories of loss and resilience. The quiet moments they shared in the garage where sunlight streamed between crevices echoed with unspoken words. Laughter bled through their shared silence, each exchange drawing them closer. Jake learned that the tattoo wasn't just about sacrifice. It was a map of grief and bravery from a time when the general lost nearly everything yet chose to serve. Yet the townsfolk couldn't see that. They saw a man with a story that didn't fit their neat boxes of respectability. Conversations stirred like leaves in a gusty wind, comments colored by the past. Jake felt the weight of their judgments wrapped around him like chains. If he protected General Thomas, would he be shunned too? The churning confusion mirrored the tension building within him. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the fundraiser loomed nearer, the town buzzed with a mix of excitement and unease. The stakes grew higher, and the choice Jake faced loomed larger. To reveal the truth behind the general's tattoo or shield him from vulnerability, would it fracture their fragile community or knit them tighter? In that moment of heightened emotion, he locked eyes with the general, a mentor, a father figure, the kind of man he aspired to be. Jake felt an ache in his chest, the profound connection pulling him into uncharted waters. As he stood at that precipice, the crowd behind him buzzing with uncertainty, he knew the heart of Maplewood was at stake. Would he shatter illusions, or brave the storm to bring them together? The air crackled with untold truths, and the flicker of hope, soon to ignite everything or burn it to ashes. The day of the fundraiser dawned bright and crisp, with a hint of excitement hanging in the autumn air. Banners fluttered cheerfully outside the community hall, colors vibrant against the blue sky. As Jake stood back, surveying the scene, his heart raced with a mix of pride and anxiety. He'd worked tirelessly to restore the general's truck, polishing it until it gleamed like the hope he felt bubbling up inside him. General Thomas, wearing his usual worn-out cap, arrived just as the first guests trickled in. The sun caught the edges of his tattoo, bringing the ink to life in a way Jake had never seen. Still, the weight of judgment lingered in the air. Jake could sense it. He could see the whispers passing between neighbors, the sideways glances filled with curiosity and skepticism. It made his stomach turn. "Are you ready for this?" the general asked, his voice steady and reassuring. Jake nodded, though a knot tightened in his throat. We can do this together, he said, trying to mask the uncertainty that brewed within. The moment called for courage, but the stakes were higher than he'd anticipated. As the celebration kicked off, laughter and music filled the hall. People mingled, but Jake's focus remained on the general. Every time the old soldier smiled, his tattoos seemed to laugh along, every curve and edge twinkling with unspoken stories. Jake wanted to know those stories. He craved understanding, not just for his sake, but for the townsfolk who clung to judgment like a lifeline. After the speeches and the auctions were over, Jake found himself alone with the general by the truck. "Was it hard for you?" he finally asked, the question slipping out, threaded with care. The general's gaze softened. "Which part?" "Dealing with the past, all the pain, the tattoo," Jake whispered. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, thick and heavy, as if the world had paused to listen. General Thomas looked at his tattoo and let out a sigh. "It was my way of carrying memories with me. Sometimes, you have to wear your scars to remind others that we all have our battles." Jake felt his heart swell. The tattoo was more than a mark. It was a testament to resilience. The general had faced unimaginable hardships and still stood tall. I think you should share your story with the town. They need to know who you really are," he urged, his voice trembling with newfound conviction. "What do you think will happen?" the general asked, his voice low and filled with doubt. "They might surprise you," Jake replied. "Wounds heal when the light shines on them." The general's eyes sparkled, a mix of hope and fear. "You're a brave young man, Jake. But it's not just about me. It's about you too." Jake's heart raced. "If we do this together, we face it together. They need to see the truth, not just about you, but about all of us. The struggles we carry." Just then, murmurs began rolling through the gathering crowd. Each murmured comment felt like a gentle wave, rising in anticipation. The two men stood shoulder to shoulder, both acutely aware of the moment hanging in the air. The townsfolk were far from their chairs, gathering around the truck, eager for the stories behind the shine. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Jake turned to the general. "This is it," he said, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Would they embrace the truth or recoil in fear? Would his own whispers blend with those of the town? With the torch of courage burning bright, Jake gathered his breath. The next steps would determine everything. "Let us show them," he said, hope igniting in his chest. But as he prepared to speak, a sudden shout erupted from the crowd, silencing all uncertainties. Jake's heart dropped. What had sparked such a commotion? The moment of truth was about to unfold, but at what cost? Jake's eyes darted to the edge of the crowd, his heart racing. Fear gripped him as he wondered what had stirred the tension. Was it doubt? Was it a challenge to the general's past? He took a breath, clearing his mind, as the shout rang through the air again. "Look! It's just a truck!" a voice called out, laced with mockery. The crowd seemed to shift, a ripple of discontent moving through them like a gale-force wind. Jake felt the heat rise to his face, the frustration threatening to erupt. "No," he thought, "this is about more than just a truck." He turned to the general, who stood still, although Jake could see the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. This was the moment they'd both anticipated, and now it felt like it was slipping through their fingers like sand. The general's tattoo, a badge of honor and pain, seemed to shimmer under the harsh light of scrutiny. Jake knew it was time to push through. A few brave souls in the crowd began to step closer, intrigued, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. Jake swallowed hard, heart pounding, and stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. "Listen," he called out, his voice shaky but earnest. "This isn't just a truck, and it's not just a story about the past. It's a reminder of who we are, and more importantly, who we can be." The murmurs faded, replaced by a tense silence as faces turned to him. He locked eyes with the general, hoping for that silent reminder of unity. General Thomas has lived through things most of us can't even imagine. This truck doesn't just carry his memories. It carries a testament of resilience. Painfully aware of the gazes locked onto him, Jake continued, "We all have our battles. We carry scars, whether we can see them or not. Some of us hide them, and some wear them proudly. But if we want to heal as a community, we must begin to understand each other." The general moved beside him, his presence grounding. "I never wanted pity or judgment," he said, his voice steady and deep. "This tattoo is a part of my journey, a journey of loss, survival, and hope. We all have something to share. We all have scars, and sharing our stories can bring us together." A ripple of emotion swept through the audience. Faces softened, and the initial skepticism began to crumble. Jake felt a surge of hope as a woman stepped forward, tears glistening in her eyes. "My son, he served too," she said, her voice full of sorrow and pride. "He came back changed, and I still don't understand what he has carried." The mood shifted. Transparency washed over the crowd, revealing vulnerability that many hadn't dared to express before. One by one, people began to step forward, sharing their own scars, muffled grief, hidden struggles, and quiet resilience. Jake's heart swelled. Could they be shining light on the darkness that had lingered too long? It was a slow burn of healing igniting, pulling the community together as they all faced their truths. But just as a wave of connection washed over the crowd, a figure burst through, fuming and loud. "This is ridiculous. We don't need to hear war stories. We need to keep the past in the past." The echoes of protest drained the warmth from the atmosphere. Fear set in again, and Jake realized they were at a crossroads. Would love overcome judgment, or would they once more be divided? The weight of those words hung heavy in the air, piercing through the moment of hope. Jake didn't know what would happen next, but he felt the battle was far from over. Would they embrace the truth, or were they doomed to repeat it? There was no turning back now. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. The voice of dissent hung in the air like a storm cloud, darkening the moment they had fought so hard to create. Disappointment gnawed at him, but he couldn't let it defeat them. He looked at General Thomas, whose brow furrowed in mixed emotions. Jake took a cautious step forward, feeling the weight of the crowd behind him. "Notice how silence often speaks louder than words," Jake called out, his tone rising above the din. "We're not here to dig up the past. We're here to understand what it means to live with it, what it means to move forward." The crowd shifted again, murmurs flowing through them like a gentle wave. It was a small crack in the hard armor of resistance. The figure who had shouted now attempted to push closer, hands raised in protest. "This isn't a therapy session. You think sharing stories will fix everything?" The pain in the woman's eyes, who had spoken earlier, reemerged, but Jake interjected. "It's not about fixing anything. It's about recognizing every person's battle, knowing that we're not alone in our fight," he said passionately. "We don't have to face this alone." One by one, people nodded, some wiping away tears, as they began to remember their connections, past hurts, and struggles they thought had trapped them in silence. Jake felt the air fill with a tension, so thick it was almost tangible. The general took a deep breath and spoke, his voice steady yet resonant. "When I got this tattoo, it was a reminder of every comrade lost, of battles fought, and of every homecoming I felt robbed of. It reminds me to honor their sacrifices, not with despair, but with understanding." He paused, letting his words sink in. The challenge had shifted. Those who had been skeptical began to reconsider. The protester, suddenly quieter, looked to the ground, his posture slackening. A young man stepped closer to the front of the crowd, eyes filled with a determination that cut through the tension. "I thought it was just me," he said, his voice trembling. My dad came back from the war a different man, and I lost him long before he actually passed. I've never known how to talk to him, or how to let him go." A gentle hush followed his confession. Empathy bridged the gap as the crowd realized that sharing their stories would allow them not just to grieve, but to heal. Jake's heart raced as he felt the weight of shared burdens lift, creating space for hope. "Yes!" Jake exclaimed, lifting his hands to pull them together. "Let us break that silence. Remembering is just the beginning. We can encourage each other. We can grow together." Emboldened by the growing acceptance, others began to share too. Stories spilled forth like a waterfall, lives intertwined with pain, loss, but also moments of warmth and hope. The crowd transformed. A mosaic of vulnerability and strength emerged. But a cold gust swept through the gathering as the protester finally spoke again, his voice hardening. "You all want to share? Fine. But you really believe it will change anything? We're still just townsfolk in a place trying to forget." A chill crept back into the air, and Jake felt the tension coil once more, ready to snap. Would they cling to their fears, or would they step into this light together? Jake searched the faces in the crowd, each one reflecting a shared struggle. He took one final breath, a spark igniting within him. Maybe forgetting is not the answer. Maybe it's about remembering and rising together. "Who else with me?" As eyes locked onto each other, Jake realized they stood on the brink of something monumental, teetering between despair and unity, questioning if they actually had what it would take to break free. With the crowd's answer hanging in the air, Jake felt all hopes converge on this moment. Would they embrace their stories, or retreat into silence once more? A stillness settled over the gathering, as if the world held its breath, waiting for anything to ignite. Jake's throat tightened as he locked eyes with the general, who nodded subtly, a sign of solidarity. Then, Jake noticed her, the woman who had voiced her doubts at the beginning, tears streaming down her face. The strength he saw in her vulnerability sparked a deep resolve in him. "Everyone's story is important," he urged, lifting his voice again. "We're bound together, and it's through sharing our scars that we find healing." The murmur of dissent softened, replaced by a collective intake of breath. He could feel it, an electric current of emotions pulsing through the crowd. Hesitant hands began to rise, one after the other, and soon the air was filled with voices that had once been seen as mere whispers. At the forefront, the young man who had spoken earlier shared more. "My sister, she came home with wounds that never healed." Didn't he recognize the woman who came back? His voice cracked, but he maintained eye contact, inviting others into his pain. The crowd slowly loosened the chains of silence they had worn for too long. Stories echoed and intertwined, defining the collective struggle of their experiences. Someone spoke of lost friends, another about broken families. Laughter mingled with tears as memories of joy and sorrow collided, creating a tapestry of humanity before Jake's eyes. Jake felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The stories shifted from individual burdens to a shared history, and he realized this was more than just sharing. It was the beginning of healing. He raised his hands once more, this time to encourage the growing dialogue rather than to command it. "See this spark?" he said, gesturing toward the crowd. "It's alive. This is the light we've all been searching for, lighting the way forward." Another voice broke through the crowd, bold and steely. It was the protester again, but this time, his words felt different. "Fine, you keep talking about healing, but how do we trust that it'll stick? How do we believe we can save what's left of this town?" His guard lowered slightly, yet the skepticism lingered. Jake stepped forward, fueled by determination. Trust grows from action. It's not enough just to share. We have to be there for one another, to turn those stories into actions. This isn't just talk, it's a commitment to one another. He took a moment, looking around, soaking in the faces before him. They were not just names on a roster or strangers in a crowd. Let us create a community of support. We can start standing together, planning events, remembering those we've lost, healing those still with us. Who's in? One by one, hands began to rise, hesitant at first, but then with greater confidence. A wave of agreement flowed through the crowd, and hope replaced despair. They weren't just townsfolk retelling old tales, they were a family finding their way back to each other. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden rays over the gathering, Jake felt the wind change. For the first time in a long while, there was warmth. But in the midst of this rekindled bond, Jake's heart jumped as he spotted General Thomas speaking quietly with someone at the edge of the crowd. Their expressions were serious, and the general's tattoo glimmered in the fading light. What were they discussing? Jake felt a surge of curiosity mixed with concern lingering in the air. As the laughter faded and conversation shifted into planning, Jake's gaze remained drawn to the two figures. What could this mean? Were there secrets behind the tattoo that were about to be unveiled? Jake tightened his grip on the microphone, feeling an urgency swell within him. Together, we'll face whatever comes, but what else lies hidden in our stories? The crowd persisted, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was only the beginning. A revelation was moving closer, and somehow, it felt bigger than all of them. Jake's eyes darted between the general and the figure at the edge of the crowd, a woman with sharp features and a determined stance. He sensed an untold story brewing in the depths of their whispered exchange. The warmth of the community he had helped ignite felt fragile, as if the flicker of hope could be snuffed out by an unexpected storm. He cleared his throat, gazing out at the faces before him, many colored with hope, but still shadowed by fears from the past. Let us share more, he called, trying to pull their attention back. A woman near the front stepped forward, her voice trembling yet fierce. I lost my brother last year. He came home from service with more than physical wounds, it was in his eyes. He was my rock, my best friend. How do we move forward without him? Her question hung heavy in the air, drawing tears from many, yet injecting a sense of purpose among those present. Jake nodded, recognizing each desperate plea as a thread woven into their collective tapestry. We remember them, he urged, his voice steady. By honoring their stories, we keep them alive. We can work together in their memory, create projects that reflect our love for them, and maybe find a little peace for us. One by one, more voices joined in. Laughter and tears intertwined, revealing layers of grief, love, and resilience. He could feel the tide of emotion rising, a wave building momentum towards something hopeful. And still, Jake couldn't ignore the general's quiet conversation. The figure beside him leaned in closer, her brow furrowed in concentration, and Jake's heart raced with the need to know more. General Thomas, he called, his voice bursting with urgency. The crowd turned, curiosity mingling with anxiety, as all eyes shifted to the two at the back. We need your voice, your experience. What are you hiding from us? The conversation broke abruptly, and General Thomas straightened, surprise flickering in his eyes. He lingered for a moment, clearly weighing the decision on his shoulders. The tattoo on his forearm seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, as if it held secrets begging to be unraveled. Finally, he stepped forward, his solid frame casting a comforting shadow over the crowd. I've kept this to myself for too long, he said, raising a hand to silence lingering whispers. Everyone has a story. And mine, it's connected to the reason we're all here. Jake felt the tension crackle in the air. The warmth of community dimmed for a moment, replaced by a tight knot of anticipation. What is your story, General? Someone called out from the back, a young voice that echoed the curiosity of many. General Thomas exhaled slowly, his eyes searching the crowd, catching each gaze with fierce intensity. This tattoo, he began, is a symbol of betrayal and redemption. It represents the struggles I faced, and the bond one made long ago with my brothers, who never returned from the fight. But it also represents hope for a future. He hesitated, the weight of his words lingering. The crowd was still, hanging on every syllable. I can't tell it all in one evening, he continued, glancing at Jake, but I will share what I can. This town and all of you are entwined in those memories more than you might think. Jake's heart raced. What secrets lay hidden in that tattoo? What connection could bind them all together in ways they never imagined? As the gathered community leaned closer, awaiting the unfolding of the general's truth, a tension brewed. There was no turning back now. They were on the verge of unearthing something monumental. What more would they learn about each other? What bonds could they forge from the ashes of pain? The questions buzzed around Jake's mind, as he wondered what deeper revelations awaited them. General Thomas took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation and the weight of unspoken memories. Years ago, I fought alongside a group of men who became my family. We faced the worst of humanity together. But it was one particular mission that changed everything. He paused, catching the eyes of those around him, searching for a familiar bond of understanding. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. The crowd shuffled closer, leaning in, hungry for the truth. How had this battle, this mission, woven itself into the fabric of their lives so deeply? There was a moment, the general said, his voice trembling slightly, when we had to make a choice. And that choice cost me everything. My brothers, the men I trusted with my life, paid the ultimate price. I came home, but the weight of their sacrifice transformed me. It put this tattoo on my arm, a reminder that I couldn't let their stories fade into silence. As the general spoke, Jake caught sight of the woman he had noticed earlier, standing at the edge of the crowd. Her sharp features softened, and he could see tears glistening in her eyes. She was captivated by Thomas's vulnerability, and it ignited something in Jake. Maybe they all had scars like the general's, some visible, some not. What happened during that mission? She asked, stepping slightly forward, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. How did you continue from there? How do we find hope? Hope, the general repeated thoughtfully, isn't something you find in grand gestures. It's in the little things, those fleeting moments that remind us we're still alive. After I lost my brothers, I made it my mission to honor them, to be the soldier they could still be proud of. And now, it's about extending that honor to the families left behind, like all of you who've shared your heart-wrenching stories tonight. The crowd's silence was profound. Jake felt a camaraderie building, an understanding that transcended pain. This was a connection that could heal. The woman's question had brought out a deeper truth, and now it was as if every heart in the crowd was starting to beat as one. Tell us how we can help, someone called out, igniting a ripple of agreement among the crowd. We want to honor them too. General Thomas looked at the eager faces before him, a spark of renewed energy igniting in his own. By sharing their stories, every name you remember, every photograph you hold, these are acts of remembrance. Together, we can create a project, a memorial, something tangible that symbolizes their bravery. It can be a place for reflection, for every family affected by the toll of war. Jake's heart soared. This wasn't just about the past. They could mold their grief into something beautiful, a testament to resilience, an act of defiance against the darkness of loss. One voice broke through the chatter of agreement, a young man with a determined look. What if we gather stories from everyone in the town? Imagine a book filled with memories, testimonials about their lives, their sacrifices. We can show future generations the impact of these heroes. The suggestion sparked enthusiasm, and others chimed in, each idea stronger than the last. They formed a vision, a community project that could create a beautiful legacy for those they lost. The bonds forming among them felt palpable, as if hope were a thread weaving them all together. In that moment, Jake looked at General Thomas, his eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for trusting us with this. You've given us a purpose. The general nodded, an understanding passing between them. But just as hope began to take a firm root within the crowd, a distant siren pierced through the air, a warning. Jake's heart sank. Was this the storm he sensed earlier? As they turned to see the flashing lights approaching their gathering, doubt crept in once more. Would they be allowed to continue this newfound journey? What awaited them? Would the community they'd begun to rebuild crumble again? The questions lingered, uncertainty casting its shadow once more. The sirens blared like angry hornets, cutting through the air, wrapping the crowd in a cloud of tension. Jake could feel the lump in his throat swell, as shadows danced in the flickering lights. Fear rippled through the faces around him, and he glanced back at General Thomas. The man stood resolute, the same soldier from years past, but now a symbol of hope and strength. Stay calm, the general instructed. His voice broke through the commotion, grounding them. Whatever happens, we've come too far to let fear dictate our path. Jake felt a rush of gratitude. In that moment, he understood the weight of leadership. Each heart in the crowd was tethered to the trust they had developed. This wasn't just a gathering. It was a fight against despair. They weren't just remembering lost souls. They were standing for them. As the police car came to a stop, two officers stepped out, their expressions serious. The crowd whispered anxiously, but Jake felt a shiver of anticipation. This was T-Code Red. It was an opportunity to show their commitment to making a difference. Good evening, one officer said, scanning the assembled group. We received reports of a gathering here tonight. We just want to ensure everything is under control. General Thomas stepped forward, his presence calming. Thank you for checking on us. We're here to honor our heroes and work on a project that will bring hope to families affected by loss. We are just getting started. The officers exchanged glances. We appreciate that. We want to support any community efforts. Just keep the noise down and stay organized. A sigh of relief swept through the crowd. With the tension easing, Jake felt energy surge once more. They were still together. They could still honor their fallen heroes. Let us keep the momentum going, the young man from earlier suggested again, enthusiasm igniting in his voice. We should brainstorm how to collect stories right now. We still have this time together. The crowd pondered, discussing ideas and forming connections. Jake spotted the woman from before. Her eyes were bright now, filled with renewed purpose. It was intoxicating, the way hope had woven through the uncertainty, lighting a flame in everyone's heart. Jake and the woman found themselves standing side by side. What do you think we should do? She asked, her tone hinting at a shared enthusiasm. We could use social media, Jake suggested. Spread the word, gather stories digitally. Everyone can participate, those who can't come here. We can create a campaign that honors every hero. Brilliant, she replied, her smile infectious. We could even create a hashtag, something like honoring our heroes. As they built on the idea, more voices chimed in, and the crowd buzzed with possibility. It felt like a cyclone of energy. Each idea propelled them forward, lifting spirits higher. But as they strategized, Jake noticed the general standing off to the side, his gaze directed at the distant horizon. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, but for a moment, Jake saw a flicker of worry pass across his face. Had they reached too high? Was the past trying to drag him back in? Before he could process it, a hush fell over the crowd. General Thomas stepped to the front again, raising his hands to quiet them. I see the fire in your eyes, and feel the strength in this room. Remember, each story shared is a piece of healing. But healing can bring to light the darkest of truths. We are not just rewriting history, we are uncovering it. Are we ready for that? Jake's heart raced. What truths lay beneath the surface? Were there stories still hidden, some that even Thomas had yet to share? The crowd stirred, uncertain yet electrified with curiosity. Jake felt the tension mount, an unspoken question lingering in the air. Would they dare dive deeper into a past that might hold more than just honor? Jake's mind raced as the general's words settled into the vast silence, like stones sinking in water. Everyone in the crowd seemed to hold their breath, caught between eager anticipation and a whispering fear of the unknown. What could the general mean by the darkest of truths? He turned to the woman beside him, still buzzing with ideas. But her brow furrowed, and he could see a flicker of confusion cross her face. "Do you think there's more to it? More than just stories?" Before he could answer, General Thomas continued, his voice steady, yet laced with a weight that felt heavier than before. "I've seen what happens when we bury the past, and I won't let any of you make the same mistakes." The crowd shifted, eyes darting around. Jake noticed a few nods, people grappling with memories that were far too personal, too raw. He caught sight of an older man, standing at the back, his fists clenched tightly, as if he were holding on to something he desperately wanted to let go of. Then, as if sensing the collective heartbeat of the crowd, General Thomas's gaze softened. "When I joined the military, I didn't just enlist to serve my country. I did it to honor a friend." He had a tattoo on his arm, a tattoo that told a story about loss, about loyalty, and about sacrifice. Jake leaned in closer, intrigued. He could sense the gravity in the air, the anticipation of revelation tinged with anxiety. "What does your tattoo say?" A voice called from the crowd. Others joined in, urging the general for more. Thomas hesitated, his expression a mix of pride and pain. "It says bravery in darkness." It was his mantra. "It reminds me that even when faced with unimaginable horrors, we have the strength within us to overcome." A murmur of understanding swept through the crowd. Bravery in darkness. The words felt heavy, as if each syllable was a pebble cast into the waters of their shared experience. But as the moment lingered, Jake's jealousy bubbled up. The general spoke of courage, while the shadows of several of his own experiences loomed behind him, unwanted and silent. How could he share his own story when others held memories that felt more significant? His pulse quickened, a tide of unspoken fears washing over him. The young man from before raised his voice again, a hopeful spark in his tone. "We should all share what bravery means to us. Each story matters, no matter how big or small." The crowd nodded, some faces brightening with newfound determination. As they exchanged glances, Jake felt a growing swell of courage buoying him. The woman turned to him again, her eyes alight with anticipation. "Are you ready to share your story, Jake?" He opened his mouth, but then the weight of all that had happened held him back. He hesitated, the words scratching at his throat. Could he bear to speak about his truth, the fragment of his soul buried deep? Before he could make up his mind, a shrill cry pierced through the air, fracturing the moment. The crowd fell silent once more, heads snapping towards the source of the disturbance. General Thomas straightened, eyes narrowing as he darted towards the sound. "Stay here," he commanded. But Jake felt a pull toward the chaos, curiosity mixing with a sense of duty. What awaited them as the tension escalated? Would it bring the truth out into the light, or would it only deepen the shadows they were trying to escape? Jake's heart raced as he followed. The night had just turned a corner, and he wondered what lay ahead for him and the others. Was he truly ready to confront whatever truth waited in the face of chaos? A sudden calm had fallen over Maplewood as the echoes of the shrill cry faded into murmurings of confusion. The general's stern voice broke through the crowd, demanding their attention, but Jake felt an undeniable tug inside him, a mix of fear and anticipation. He pushed forward, weaving through the throngs of faces that had once seemed so unified, now fraying at the edges. "What is happening?" Jake whispered to the woman who had stood by his side, her eyes glued to the space beyond the crowd. "I don't know," she replied, her brows furrowed, tracing the trajectory of the commotion. But it doesn't feel good. As they reached the fringes of the gathering, Jake's heart raced. The general stood like a protective oak, broad and unwavering as he shielded the front row from whatever had startled them. Stepping out from behind him, Jake's chest tightened. The atmosphere buzzed with a mixture of nervous energy and the scent of uncertainty. This was a pivotal moment. Things could swing either way. Bursts of voices filled the space, rising and falling like a storm. "Someone's hurt," cried a girl from deep in the crowd. "We need help." General Thomas's eyes narrowed, assessing the situation. "Everyone, remain calm. Let us make space." He raised a hand, but conflict flickered in the air. How could they help when they were still figuring out how to stand together? Jake felt the impulse to act. "Come on," he shouted, revitalizing hidden courage within. "Let us clear a path. We're here for each other." As the crowd reluctantly parted, Jake pushed forward with the woman in tow. They neared the center where a boy, no older than 18, lay on the ground surrounded by anxious faces, his body trembling, eyes wide with panic. "What is going on?" Jake knelt beside him, looking into the boy's eyes. "You're okay. We're here." The boy stammered, tears pooling at the corners of his eyes. "I didn't mean to. I just remembered everything. My brother." The confession hit Jake like a freight train, and he could suddenly see deeper than the boy's immediate pain. The shadows of loss were alive in the boy's eyes, birthing fear that no gathering could erase. Jake felt a fierce desire to embrace this moment. "You're not alone. We all have craters in our hearts. It's okay to feel. We've all been there." In that moment, the general stepped closer, his commanding presence like a warm light. "You must be brave, son. Sharing our pain is what begins to heal our wounds. Look at us. We're here, aren't we?" The boy's gasps steadied as he focused on the crowd, the faces of those around him, people no longer strangers, but allies in a shared journey. Jake could almost hear the unspooling of history. The boy's pain resonated in the collective sigh of the townsfolk standing around, echoing their lost stories, their struggles. Each of them held pieces of sorrow within, and together they could weave those threads into a stronger tapestry of unity. "Let us honor our scars," Jake said, emboldening his voice. "Let us break the silence. You're brave for feeling what you feel. We're brave for allowing ourselves to empathize." As if ignited by his words, someone from the crowd shouted, "Yeah! We've all got something to share." As murmurs of agreement arose, Jake glanced at General Thomas, who now stood shoulder to shoulder with him, a fearless companion. "Anytime we share our truth, we sharpen the edge of understanding," the general said, his voice steady. "Let us continue with this. Let us gather around and support each other. That's how healing starts." One by one, more people stepped forward, sharing their experiences, stories of loss, of pain, and love, a chorus of vulnerability rising around that boy's trembling form. Finally, the boy found his voice again. I don't want to forget him. I don't want pain to keep tearing us apart. That's exactly it. Remember him. Talk about him. You bring him to life with every word you share," Jake interjected. And as more hearts unburdened themselves, the earlier uncertainty faded into the backdrop. The air thrummed with newfound warmth, a formation of empathy enveloping them all. By the end of the night, the atmosphere was transformed. They weren't merely relatives and townsfolk now. They were a mosaic of shared experiences, brimming with purpose, determined to honor the memories bound in silent moments. Jake felt a wave of contentment wash over him. It felt right. No longer were they shadows in the corners of Maplewood, but a community standing in solidarity. Lost stories became voices echoing through the night sky, illuminating paths for those who had once felt entirely alone. Beside him, General Thomas smiled, a look of pride and relief resting comfortably on his face. The tattoo that had once defined struggles now pulsed with life, telling a different story. One about healing, about unity, about reclaiming their narrative. It was time. They were ready. The dawn of a new Maplewood shimmered on the horizon, and Jake knew they'd face whatever came next together. The past might be hidden in tattoos and scars, but oh, they were now stepping into the light, ready to merge tales of grief with stories of hope. As for their journey, it had only just begun. So, if you're sitting there, feeling those same shadows, remember this: what has been hidden can always be revealed through the light of sharing. Stand together. Share your stories. They matter. And for you watching right now, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us honor our stories together.